I disagree with the mosque because I feel that, first off, the group building it, they're named the Cordoba, and that's after a place in Spain that was overtaken by jihadists, basically, for 700 years.
The mosque is at ground zero. It's 1:37. This is WCCO. So let's leave Illinois politics and talk about the site of the World Trade Center towers, ground zero, that, of course, was devastated on the 11th of September. And so now they're rebuilding it. And lo and behold, have you heard there's going to be a mosque at that site? This is at least one way the story is told. I'll give you a different version of this picture in a second. But they want to put a mosque up near there, which sure seems to be begging a fight, doesn't it? It seems to be insensitive and different. Or maybe it's a sign that we all ought to come together, unite hands, and embrace world peace. You know, the people who are the victims and the people that were on the bad guy side of this all together with a mosque nearby. But maybe Americans won't see it that way. Maybe they want that as far away as possible. It's in the news today because Sarah Palin is tweeting about it in 140 characters or less. Twice she has said the following: peaceful New Yorkers, please, spelled PLS, because no matter how important this is, it has to be in just 140 characters. So she says, peaceful New Yorkers, please refute the Ground Zero Mosque plan if you believe catastrophic pain caused at Twin Towers site is too raw, too real. An hour later, the former Alaska governor tweeted the following: peace-seeking Muslims, please understand, Ground Zero Mosque is, capital letters now, unnecessary provocation. It stabs hearts. Please reject it in interest of healing. Sarah Palin's tweets resonate. Either people hear them and believe them, or hear them and copy them because she's got legs these days. So I want to talk a little bit about this for a minute. On a phone line is Ahmed Rehab. He's joined me on the radio before. Ahmed is the director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Ahmed, John Williams, how are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me, John.
What do you do? What is your council all about?
We're a civil rights organization. We're also a public relations organization trying to build better relations between the Muslim community and Americans at large.
What's your reaction to Sarah Palin's tweet?
I think it's misguided. I think it misses the point. The people involved in building the center have nothing to do with the tragedy of 9/11, nor do the Muslims at large who live in this country and the ones in New York who would be the patrons of this center. So it's essentially blaming the wrong people.
Technically, I understand that it's not going to be right at ground zero, but it'll be a couple blocks away. Maybe that matters, maybe that doesn't, but that seems to me to be not right there. It's a couple blocks away. Do you understand that to be the case also?
Absolutely, and that's part of the irony of all of this, is that the media is talking about mosque at ground zero, but here we have a situation where it's neither a mosque nor is it at ground zero. And that point has been made. The other point that's been made is how many blocks away from ground zero is acceptable. You know, is 5 blocks, is it 7 blocks, is it 10 blocks? It's just, it's...
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, Ahmed, but I think it's germane. I do think, for instance, we're at a mosque, and we're at ground zero. We're actually facing that fence that's on the perimeter now. I think that would resonate differently than a cultural center 2 blocks away, don't you?
I do, but I do want to challenge the notion that had it been a mosque and closer to ground zero, that it would be problematic. It really wouldn't be. I mean, a mosque has nothing to do with what happened on 9/11.
Well, what is a mosque?
A mosque is a place where people get together to worship God and to talk about things that are constructive for themselves and for humanity.
Well, I understand that. Well, it may be a bastardization of the faith, but the people that flew the planes into the buildings believed themselves to be Muslim as well, correct?
Yes, they did, and so did the people that died in the Twin Towers, many of them. There was at least a couple hundred Muslims that died on 9/11 that were Americans who were also Muslim.
Well, I think I'm on your side on this, Ahmed, but I mean, let's at least acknowledge that if it were a mosque or a center of faith near ground zero, that is, at least at first blush, off-putting to people. You can understand how people would stand back and say, really? I mean, they have to process that. You can appreciate that, can't you?
Actually, no. Tell me why that would be an acceptable sentiment. Explain that to me.
I'm not saying, you and I have talked about this before.
No, I'm saying, like, why would anybody?
Why would anybody? Because
this would be an acceptable sentiment.
For the reasons we just stated, because the people that flew the planes into the buildings believed that they were extreme followers of the Muslim faith. This was some sort of extension of their religious beliefs, or at least they believed that their radical religious views would save them in the afterlife. So they fly those planes into the building. And then a mosque which celebrates or includes their faith is right there. People want distance from that. They don't want to invite the people that did it.
But see, that's where we're making a logical fallacy. The proper sentiment is as follows. The people that flew these planes into these buildings and those who support them should not build a mosque near ground zero. But anybody else who has nothing to do with that, for us to project that on them is blaming the wrong group of people. And it's unfair, it's unjust, it's un-American.
Well, what's the right group of people?
The people who actually support terrorism, which isn't the people who are building this Islamic Center. These are people who are not just not supporting of terrorism or even indifferent. They're people who are against terrorism.
Right. Well, but one doesn't necessarily imply the other, but this is also true, that the people who did support the terrorism were of that faith. So there is the connection.
They were also of the human race. Should no humans build buildings around ground zero? I mean, how far are you willing to abstract these individuals to the group from which they came?
It's not a direct correlation, but I mean, there is a tie there, isn't there? I mean, it's more than just a coincidence, isn't it, Ahmed, that they were Muslims and that they flew the planes into the building? I mean, there's a relationship between those two acts.
Their ideology is so particular that it cannot be abstracted to the larger group of people from which they come.
Is their ideology in any way an accurate reflection of any part of the faith?
Absolutely not. In their minds, it might be, but that's exactly what's wrong with their ideology.
And that's why I asked that question. Hold on one second. Ahmed Rehab is on the line. I'm going to pause. We'll pick it up here in a minute. You may want to be part of this conversation, too. The guest is the Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. CCO, this is John Williams. Good afternoon. We're talking with Ahmed Rehab. He is the Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're talking about what Sarah Palin is tweeting about, and America is talking about a center near ground zero. It's not a mosque. It's not our ground zero. It's 2 blocks away. It's a cultural center. The group behind it is the Cordoba Initiative, and while it would be a place for Muslims to go and express their faith, it would also be a gym. There'd be a swimming pool. It would serve the community at large. It would not be just for Muslims. At least that's the way I understand it. Ahmed, am I right about all of that?
You are right about that, and it's just to add something to that. The people behind this initiative and the initiative itself are essentially the enemies of terrorists. They're people who their ideology is the complete opposite of the terrorist ideology.
Well, then there's Sarah Palin tweeting, "Peaceful New Yorkers, please refute the Ground Zero Mosque." I wonder if she knows how wrong that is, or if she doesn't care because she just likes to stir it up.
I think there are a lot of people who are basically exploiting the situation, exploiting the general fears and misconceptions about Islam and Muslims at large.
And what do they have to gain? What's the exploitation?
Well, what they have to gain is they see Islam as the new enemy. They see this nation as a Christian nation, and they see this entire struggle as one between Islam and Christianity rather than between rogue terrorists and democratic, secular United
So even
States.
if that's not a mosque, and even if there aren't rogue terrorists in there, if you label it that way and then stand against it, then you look good.
Exactly.
And that's awful. I think that's awful if that's what's happening.
Well, she's trying to build political capital that way, and sometimes you need to build up enemies in order to, be the hero that fights against them.
And isn't that what the problem is here? And that is, I mean, I've been playing the devil's advocate, but frankly, I've been asking, I think, fair questions that a lot of people want the answer to, Ahmed, and that is, people see the Muslim religion as the religion of terrorists, and therefore, if the Muslims have a center near ground zero, it looks like they're thumbing their nose at America's tragedy.
Well, let me, a couple of responses to that. First of all, people who have been going to see their Muslim doctor for the past 20 years, will they suddenly stop? Will they suddenly not allow this person to save their lives because their argument is, well, there was a terrorist who had the same faith as you? that doesn't make